Why do you love crypto?
There's no other way to describe it. It is the most cutting edge part of marketing. There's more freedom than any other industry.
And that makes work not feel so much like work. It makes it feel like just another great part of your life that helps like shape who you are, why you're doing what you're doing.
You can take what you've already done that was innovative, throw it away and build something new.
You want to give someone something versus taking something away. Projects underestimate the power of community. Numbers are fake. The only thing that's real is culture and vibes.
Leadership is not a means to an end. It's just a calling on the way to shaping the reality of everyone else. What are you cost signaling? How have you done the hard things to show that you've done the hard things? If you have a cool identity as a brand or anything, and you stick to what your guns are, then eventually it's going to work.
Economics.
So Marco, good to have you, mate.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Yeah, it's been fun to, we had a little coffee before this. We're in Dubai. It's Token 2049. Welcome.
Again, thanks for having me. You're popping my cherry for these type of podcasting. Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Good. Well, I think we've been talking on and off for a little while, right? And I follow a lot of the stuff that you say on X, and I know you've got your Medium, and you've got you do some podcasting yourself as well. But I think what I'd like to do with all of this is just kind of hear about the person behind the socials, right?
Sounds good.
Behind, because you've got so much stuff on there on the timeline that's either hyper optimized brain rot, or you have infra bore fest where everyone's just saying the same things. Like, this whole 6 months has been, yes, stable coins, yes, very smart stable coins. And I think there's a space to find interesting people and tell interesting stories. And I think you're one of those people.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in, maybe it's one of the first time that I'm going to disclose this even online, but I grew up in Indonesia, in Jakarta. I was stateside for around 8 years or 9 years. Came back to Southeast Asia, mostly kind of nomadic, but still based in Southeast Asia. But yeah, it's a story of a kid from Southeast that went to the States, like maybe many, many million others, and that got into the crypto rabbit hole.
And what drew you in there? Because I think a lot of people got into crypto, and everyone's got a different story how they got in, right?
Yeah, mine was around late 2016, early 2017 era. So this was during my college days, and this was like the pinnacle of the ICO era, like pretty much. But again, as a college kid with less than $1,000 to like my name, that was like, it was very exciting to participate in that moment. But that pretty much how I fell down the rabbit hole. Like I remember I used Robinhood, the normal just like trading app in 2015 to trade Facebook stocks. Like I bought like $500, and then I was like, it was such a dumb way of thinking back then, but I was like, okay, if I get 10% every year, it's only $50. I will never get rich through stocks. So is there any other type of like markets that I can get into? So I started trading UGAS and DGAS. So these are actually 3 times levered ETNs on the price of natural gas, which is like the original, like leverage stuff. So like I made like low thousands on that. And then a friend told me about crypto. So I got into the space, did the whole like ICO bubble, got my badge of first cycle, which meant that I gave back 98.3% of my gains back to the markets. But that's the origin story,
And that's the price we pay for learning, right?
That's
the market teaches tuition. You. So you went to college, got the bug, paid the original gas fees, I guess.
The original gas fees.
And then you got into crypto. What happened next?
Pretty much decided that maybe I'm one of the few cohorts of folks who are in their late 20s that their entire life or professional life is just crypto. So I just decided, hey, either I'm gonna try to go back to Asia and get a job in like the normal Web2 VCs, banking or tech, or I'm gonna stay in the States, just like many other. I like to joke and tell myself I was a former U.S. visa farmer, because there's a lot of people who are doing that. But yeah, I decided to stay in the States to get a crypto job and so on. So I moved to San Diego post college. La Jolla, the most beautiful city, but also makes you the most complacent if you're young. It's just like almost perfect weather, 24/7 and so on. But yeah, that's how I got my start.
And what were you doing in La Jolla?
I was basically the most junior person at this fund called Digital Capital Management. I think their website is still around, but they managed close to like 80 to 100 million back then in 2019, which was one of the more like notable ones in those era. Because you have to remember, this is like pre-DeFi, pre-NFT. We're mostly just trading on like Kraken and Bitfinex, just majors, Bitcoin, ETH, and so on.
And what was that like joining this as a new job, right?
It was very interesting because what a lot of people don't realize is 2018, 2019 was like really like the sentiment was like at the bottom. Like if people think like 2023 or like 2020 or like even now is bad, like there's no way. Like that era, a lot of people became Bitcoin maxi because there was nothing else to like do basically, because folks are like, okay, all these tokens are like not doing anything. I remember I was doing a tokenomics analysis on freaking Nexo and Celsius token because they were one of the few that actually at least had some use case in their own platforms, and there's like some sort of like flywheel and discount that you can model out. But yeah, I mean, like I was the most junior person there, do like a little bit of like everything, like front office, mid office, back office. So it was a very good first experience, I would say.
And I want to dig into Celsius next because it's a really interesting topic. But so I think I've talked about this before, but I used to be a doctor, right? And when you're not around the kind of financial culture or even anything to do with venture capital or funding, even the idea of fundraising is like this alien thing.
Right.
And then when you hear about someone joining as a youngster to join one of these companies, so you mentioned quite a few things like front office, back office, due diligence. What does that look like in a day? Because some people who are probably going to be watching this are thinking, I want to get into venture capital.
Right.
I want to get into some kind of financial markets company. And a lot of people don't know where to start, right?
Right.
What do you actually do?
Yeah, no, I guess like, first of all, I do have to say that maybe my experience is like slightly different because like if somebody were to go through the normal like investment banking route, you know, like either as like a sell side, buy side, front office, like that would look a lot different. This is like this was like crypto fund in the early days. So it was much more chaotic, but I can still give like the simple overview of that. Well, in essence, essentially, it's like front office is like the one that's like doing all the investment diligence and so on. So kind of depends on what's your style. But like in this case, because it was more of a liquid fund than a VC necessarily, so a lot of that is just like really looking into like the Bitcoin price, thinking of like, is any of the financial market macro news is going to impact this? Back then, there wasn't as many models that folks have made. So we've tried to do like some analysis, like what's the cost basis of miners right now? Like how much does it cost them in terms of like electricity and so on to produce one Bitcoin? And that like we would try to use that as like a prop signal. Okay, is this the time to buy? Is this the time to sell? Because this was like, again, pre-farming, pre-NFT, pre-DeFi. So kind of limited to what we were able to do, but that's, I would say, what is like what I describe as like front office. And then middle and back, if I can jumble it all, it's like pretty much just, you know, like making sure that all of our trades are settled correctly. We have like proper reporting, investor relations, like NAV every single day. So back then, I would say the majority of what we do is like, that was like at the bottom of the bear market. So we were really trying to basically trade to the best that we can in those markets, and also see like, okay, what's what's next on this? Like, can we still invest on some seed deals that might be good in 2020, 2021, and so on? But yeah, like I would say it's a very case by case, but a lot of it is really just being like finding edge in this chaotic world.
And I think there's something interesting you said that in 2018, 2019, people went back to Bitcoin. It was like almost like a return to purity, almost like a religious. You know? This didn't promise me anything but one thing. Everything else promised me the world, and now it's gone down.
Yep.
Do you think that's still the case? Do you think that we're returning to Bitcoin, or do you think there's a different vibe now?
That is a very good question, I think, in this environment, because I think we're seeing a form of that, just a bit different. As I'm sure like everybody that's probably listening to this know that the ETF is one of the most successful ETF launches, like the Bitcoin ETF, way more successful. I think it hit the same amount of AUM as gold within like the span of like less than a year. But the point is, I do think we're seeing a form of that, but just not as bad, because back then all of the altcoins are truly vaporware, or either like they never delivered anything. In our era right now, these coins are still delivering products, but I think it's, again, we can talk for hours on this, but I think it's the capital markets dynamics on the private and public that makes things a little bit tricky. And of course, we've seen a lot of commentaries on X and so on that, hey, like valuation might be going down. The same book of just like doing more infra tokens with hyper optimization and then raising for it, it will get harder and harder and harder. Like every single cycle, the FDV and the comparables for those type of tokens are only going to get lower. So in a way, we're seeing a back to that, because like everybody's trying to pander to the institutional side, because everybody knows that Bitcoin needs to be the one that opens like the floodgates so that there are more buyers for all of our tokens and memes and so on. But yeah.
Absolutely. It's the marginal buyer.
It's the marginal buyers, exactly.
And I saw a great graph that showed when Pump Fund launched and then the Total 3, which was the entire market cap for those watching at home who've not heard that term before. And when Pump Fund launched and the volume goes up on Pump Fund, Total 3 went down at almost the same rate, which to me suggests that the marginal buyers are going there. Because I think the market is, you can look at it, I think someone much smarter than me said this, it is a aggregate vector of human psychology. Right. And that also has a different element to it, which is history and belief. Because I remember in 2017 when a coin for pets or dentists came out, and I deeply believed that it might just work. And was I an idiot? Probably. Am I still an idiot? Probably. I still buy some tokens that I shouldn't. However, everyone else did too. So I think that there was a shared belief structure. And this feedback loop between private and public markets is slowly becoming shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right.
So we've all collectively lost some belief in the promises that were made. Things like the L1 premium, things like the valuations. I believe the reason that everyone calls for apps and products, but no one's funding it, my view is that a platform has unlimited upside in your mind.
Yeah.
A product has a very capped upside because there's only so many people in the world. There's only so much they can spend on it. Whereas when you're launching something general purpose, it's very easy to say, this could change the world, right? And I think it's a pendulum. It goes back and forth. One thing I've read about that's very interesting that I think you've spoken quite publicly about is contrarian investing and human-centric investing. What did you mean by that when you wrote it?
Yeah, so I guess let me expand a bit on that. The human-centric one is a little bit easier to explain because I would say investing, especially pre-seed and seed round, a lot of it is really believing on the founders, right? I think a lot of people often over-indexed on the ideas, the credentials of the founders. When what I mean by human-centric, and of course I have to give like credits also to my mentor, like Dovi, like on this, but like human-centric is essentially seeing like what's the motivation behind this person doing X or Y or Z. And I think a lot of people forget that and might be a bit of a cynical view, but also very pragmatic on this. Crypto is a multi-jurisdiction industry, which means that it's actually much harder to enforce anything legally, which means that if a founder wants to do bad act, there's not as much things that you can do in comparison to like if it's like a Web2 company based in SF, the VC is also based in SF, and the legal entity is based in SF, and they can just sue them, right? Like that's a very clear path. In crypto, I think because it's actually very easy and a token for both for the good sides and the bad sides of token is still largely not regulated. That again, I'm not advocating for tokens to be fully regulated like equities because then it would lose its superpower. But because of the fact that token is not that regulated, there's a lot more like shenanigans that people can do, which to me it's actually very important to like really read into like the human like motivation, just like what's the background of the founder, why does he want to do this? Is there any sort of like personal chip on his shoulders or on her shoulders? Just really reading, trying to take a step back and strip away like all the product PMF approach and just like, what is this person, right? So that's what I would call by like human-centric investments.
That's a very different take to what traditionally people think of when they think about investing, right? They think facts, not feelings.
Yeah.
And I think as markets have taught us over and over again that as a society, as individuals, are primarily driven by
Mostly
feelings.
emotions,
And I think, you know, saying that as currently working as a market is probably something I would say, right? But when it comes to seeing founders, speaking to founders, and there's going to be a lot of founders or people thinking about becoming founders.
Right.
A lot of people are trying to raise money for an idea, especially in today's day and age, right? The barrier from idea to prototype to even plan, whether it's good or not plan, is so small compared to what it used to be. The next step is, how do I get capital?
Yeah.
If you had to give any advice to people about how to present themselves, how to even find their motivation, what would you say from all of the people that you've spoken to?
So I think just trying to be a bit more like pragmatic here. I think if you're an aspiring founder, you really need to know which area, let's say I'm going to give like advice like specifically for like crypto. You would need to know what kind of crypto founders you would want to be. Is it like a protocol founder? Is it more of like a Web 2.5 crypto data company-ish, like those type of founders? Is it like a more like TradFi, CFI, you know, like you want to make your own like ETF that's like based in emerging markets? So like those are all different types of crypto founders. I think a lot of the times these founders don't really know the makeup of the crypto VCs, and even the crypto VCs, there are different types of them. There are like crypto VCs that only invest in tokens. There are crypto VCs that are like a subsidiary of like a much larger like TradFi companies. And then so you would want to know, okay, they might invest in XYZ. I think it's really taking a step back. First of all, like knowing what type of founder, kind of depending on your edge, your product, your advantage, and so on. And then after you know that, make sure that you at least have done the groundwork to know, okay, maybe it's kind of pointless if I talk to type A VC because they don't really invest in my kind of company. I should go to like type B and like type C. But I think just to like wrap it all up, in today's days and age, like I would say that's the core thing that you would have to solve first. We can talk about how do you sort of like wrap your product in a way that sells the dreams, sells the visions, and so on. Because like entrepreneurship, at the end of the day, it's still a combination of a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's actually factual. There's an element of faking it till you make it, but you have to make sure that but you're not lying. Like sure the line of like selling dreams and aspirations and visions and the execution needs to catch up. I mean, like even Elon has been selling dreams of like cars, of like automated cars from like the last 5 years, and he's still lagging behind. But that's I would say that's where you have to know like where's your line basically. So once you know that, then you can sort of like create this better narrative and like story, but make sure that the execution side can actually catch up to that, because like otherwise it will just end up as a grift.
That's a really interesting point. I like that because I think there's a great. I think it was Brian Chesky. I can't remember who said it, but you can either have incremental innovation, which is actually just a good business, but doesn't necessarily take risk on capital because people are wanting to have multiple
scale business.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you can have sea changes where you do something completely new. What I see, because I have an agency background and we'd work with a lot of teams that were either looking to raise capital or going from like a seed to a Series A, and they wanted to see how do I get to that bit? How do I tell that story?
Right.
And what would invariably happen with very technical founders would be say, we are better than X because we do this much better. And then, but where's the dream? Where's the fun?
Yes.
The advice that I would always give is spend more time on the meal than the menu, right? don't sell the plane ticket, sell the holiday.
Right. Yeah.
And people like dreams. I think people want to invest in something that means something to them. So I completely agree with that. And I think the idea of faking until you make it is to be deeply successful in anything, I think you have to be delusional. If you want to change the world, everyone is going to tell you, don't do it.
Right.
You know, if you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here with you in Dubai having a conversation about something this interesting,
right,
I would have been like, you're an idiot. Just stay within your job as a doctor. Don't try any of this other weird stuff. It's so risky. So I think there's an element of maybe people are believing it more now because I think entrepreneurship and being a founder is a much more acceptable thing.
Absolutely.
Almost glamorized.
Absolutely.
To some extent. Maybe over glamorized.
Yes.
You know, everyone's an indie hacker, everyone's a builder.
I would fully agree with that, yeah.
But even then, like I think it's amazing to have people, if I was, 20 or something and someone told me like, find something you're really interested in, find a few friends who are talented and just try and make something happen. I think everyone should do that at least once in their life, right?
For sure.
Tell me more about any big risks you took, any big risks, whether it's career or investing or risks you didn't take. So I remember you wrote something very interesting about missing the AI agent narrative, right? And that was really refreshing.
Yes.
Because everyone on X is always like humble bragging.
Oh,
saying,
look at my win and so on. Yeah.
Well, I always knew this was going to happen. or it's like those traders that are like
it's the VC thing, boy, right?
Yeah. We are smart because we did Y, but please ignore all the other misses.
Well, okay, maybe I can share a few stories. But it's funny that you mentioned that because like my most liked tweets of all time, if I'm not mistaken, Solana posted like, "Hey, we have our 5-year anniversary. Post something about us that you remember." And I used to help this angel investor in 2017, 2018. He's a real estate guy, but he likes to invest in crypto on the side. I remember he sent me a deck and he said, "Hey, I'm not interested. There are many Ethereum killers wannabe, and I don't trust these guys." He said, "I don't trust these guys." And it's a Solana seed round at 25 cents per token. And I'm like, oh my God, that's that. And maybe the whole AI agent trend was one of the bigger myths. But if you're asking me, I guess, about the biggest risk.
What about a personal risk?
Yeah, might be not the most sexy answer, but I do think in 2018, jumping into this space, that was still the riskiest. Any career change right now inside crypto, or like launching something and spending my own capital to either like bootstrap my like media, my newsletter, and so on. Like, although those are all, of course, risks that I'm very proud that I've taken, those are still, I would say, like calculated and not as scary as like because like for like folks that have been around since like the 2018 days, like the sheer dread that's like lingering on the industry back then, it was like it's incomparable. I think a lot of people don't really know like that's so like I would still say that like just taking that risk of just like a fresh grad, I could have worked for like Deloitte or like something, but I just decided like, hey, let's just jump into like this random ass space back then. Yeah,
I always think that if you go for prestige, you will never get what you want. Because if you chase the prestigious job, it's what someone else has told you, right?
Status game versus
exactly. Because there's different games, right?
Yeah.
There's wealth games, status games, there's even growth games. But I think if you play growth games, the other two will naturally happen because you're going to just always be learning and doing new things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And jumping into the space, look, I mean, even though now it's more acceptable, I think if you told anyone that I'm going to get a job in crypto, the face they make is a very unique face.
A very unique face, yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, I'm happy for you, but are you trying to scam me? Like, what are you selling? Do you think that'll change? Do you think that'll change as things get better?
Yes. I mean, I think the original change happened when folks like Stanley Druckenmiller and so on like said, hey, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And that de-risked the career risk for established portfolio managers.
Yes.
You know, like even though these folks might be playing like career and like status game and they're wealthy and so on, but like there's still some risk even if you're working at these like pot shops. You know, like if you're like a late 30s PM, I'm gonna deploy into Bitcoin. Like now you can say, oh, Stanley Druckenmiller did it. So like,
exactly.
So like I think even from like a trading career perspective, it's much better now. Even like I mean, a lot of the big banks have like subsidiaries, right? Like that's just trading crypto. So like I think it's only gonna get better and better. I do think that is mostly the financial side of crypto that's have gotten better because of ETFs and banks and so on. The tech side of crypto is a little bit tricky because I always feel that it goes back and forth a bit. Like NFT had its moment, but then I mean I think you as a marketer would argue this like the sentiment on NFT and crypto is still very bad amongst streamers, like Twitch streamers, gamers. Like they don't want to touch it. Like even if right now, even if you're not selling the actual NFT and if it's just like the tech behind the scenes, if they know it has anything to do with like blockchain, they would the first thing on their mind, oh, it's a scam, right?
Yes.
And so like I think on the culture side and on the tech side, we still need a lot of work to be done, but the financial side has taken care of itself. Yeah.
You're saying we need NFT PR.
We need NFT PR. Yeah. That's your next service.
Yes, exactly. Because I'll be honest, I mean, I want to dig into that in a little bit, but I miss the NFT days. Not because of, you know, capital comes and goes, right? Gambling is just gambling at the end of the day. And it makes things sometimes more interesting, but I think they always say it's that the real gains are friends you made along the way, right?
Yeah.
I haven't found that with meme coins. It's
actually that's true.
The most value extractive. Like I'm not against them. I think they're incredible attention vectors, and they've also changed the world. Right? Argentina geopolitics is on
crazy.
a meme coin. If you told me this in 2016 and 2017 when Dogecoin was on Poloniex and we were just in the troll box together, and that Trump was going to be launching a coin, I don't even know what I would have said. But I think we're living in this post.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Poe's law?
No,
Poe's law
not really.
is basically at some point the society becomes so crazy that you cannot tell if it's parody or real.
Right. Which is already happening.
Which is already happening, right? And I think that's because society is accelerating so fast that normally it's like generational shifts. So in the 50s, you know, suddenly there's color TV and entertainment. Everyone's like, oh, this is terrible. The world is changing. But it was over a generation, and that's fine. So the kids grew up with it, and that was normal.
Yeah.
Whereas now we've gone from no phones to global internet. Everyone's got a phone, social media, AI in less than a generation.
Yep.
So that's what I think everything feels so strange. But look, the NFT bit, I loved it because you had culture, you made friends, you had a community. Like NFT communities still hang out together, right? I don't know if we can bring that back. I hope we can.
I hope. Yeah. I mean, it's that's a very good point. Like memes are definitely much more PvP in terms of like, even though like NFTs, of course, there are like grifters from back then. Even the grifters had to do more work back then because they had to actually draw the arts and sell the communities. Like now you just print something and then you make this perception that the chart is going to go up and so on.
Yes.
Like I wish we can have that back. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's like it's a social contract, right? even traditional financial markets, right? Look, I buy a stock, I want to get the price to go up. And for me to exit, someone else needs to buy it at the top.
Yeah.
Right. It is by its nature, PvP. But we all accept it, and that's okay. And it's not considered a scam to people, even though people lose loads of money in the stock market, especially on CFDs, right? Retail.
Yeah, CFD is crazy.
It's almost like we agreed that we'll buy tokens, and it's okay because it takes a while. We'll buy NFTs, it's okay because you might lose more money, but like it still takes a while. Whereas when the meme coin hit, I think everyone collectively agreed that this is too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
And it takes away the fun to some extent. And there's still, I saw a great tweet, which was the guys and girls that sit on the meme scope, Axiom, Photon, all of these essentially industrial grade financial tools, right?
Yes.
And they sit on them 24, like almost like 15 hours a day. And they have all the alerts. And it's essentially the Bloomberg terminal of culture, right? And they're like industrial grade intuition experts because
Intuition expert.
you've got to move so fast and make a judgment on, because you're trying to ride a momentum wave of culture.
Yes.
It's like the ultimate. What do I think people are going to think? Who are going to think that they're going to think?
Yeah.
It's like technical analysis for society.
No, that's true. That's true. You mentioned something that's very good that I remember my old supervisor told me. In the stock market, I think there is still a consensus that, hey, things are going to go up. If you buy like S&P, it's going to continuously go up because the world economy is going to keep growing, like GDP is going to grow. So it's a positive sum game. It's not a zero sum game. And he told me this before DeFi happened. So like, again, this was like 2019. But he was saying that to him, crypto feels a lot more like commodities. It's more zero sum game. One can even argue that for commodities now, if there's like more and more demands, then it's not a zero sum game. But his point is that until our space finds something that's actually cash flowing, every price increase and decrease is simply buyers and sellers, right? Even Bitcoin right now with the ETF, it's a momentum trade. It's trading more like gold. Like people think it's going to go up, and I'm going to buy it. Even gold has like some use cases in like inside your phones or like some gold parts and gold components. That's why I think crypto is still a very much zero sum game. Even if a lot of these like L1s, L2, some of these protocols are cash generating and like revenue generating, the comparables to like the total market cap and so on, it is like you can't tell people, hey, buy a top 10 crypto index and it's going to continuously go up in the next in the next 20 years. You might be able to do that, but that's just a Bitcoin bet basically. So just buy Bitcoin, right? Like all of these other tokens, it's TBD. So like everything is like momentum, like opportunistic trade and so on. There's nothing bad about that, but I do think it's like an awareness that you need to have if you wanted to participate in this market. Like this is not the same as of like if you put your money in like S&P, sure it might go up and down, but it's gonna go up in the next 20 years. Why will it always go up? Because the world's gonna produce more and more value. The whole worldwide GDP is gonna go up. So there will always be more money flowing in back to the stock market, but that's not the case with our space.
And it's also a belief, right?
Yeah.
Because the S&P going up is a belief that population is going to go up and GDP is going to go up.
Yeah.
If you look at real terms in terms of productivity and adjusting for inflation, net new value on the S&P is like almost a flat line.
I see.
Because the S&P going up in value is just farming central banks, right?
Yes.
Liquidity has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you think about, even DeFi, aside from basis trading, every yield source is essentially farming the US government.
Farming the VC's capital.
Farming the VC, and incentives and VCs.
Yeah.
I guess if you dig down into it too far, there's always like a belief at the end of the belief tree.
It's a belief system.
I agree though, in terms of, I think maybe if I'm hearing correctly then is don't drink the Kool-Aid too much, right? Know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
If you were looking at the market and trying to explain to someone who's never been in it and wants to get in it and wants to participate both financially and work in it.
And work in a crypto market.
What would you say is a good way for them to start?
I think you have to love the game and get the culture. Let me expand what I mean by that. I think I wrote a piece called Founder Culture Fit. And I think it's basically my read on like, there are certain types of crypto founders, aspiring crypto founders who are very smart, have a lot of experience, maybe even outside of crypto, either in tech or in finance. But oftentimes I see that they don't get our space. And that get part can be a bit more vague and ambiguous, but I think the easiest way to start is just by getting your hands dirty. And what I mean by that is like, don't be, like a stablecoin founder just because you have worked for 15 years at Citibank. Now you want to be a stablecoin founder, but you have never even used Ethena, right? Like that's like, to me, like a lot of people kind of like looked at the space as like, oh, there's a lot of opportunity here. I have like credentials from outside that now I can bring inside. Now I'm gonna do something here. You have to try the product. You have to be active on crypto Twitter, like all of us, I think. So you just like start following folks that you feel like have like interesting takes on the industry and the verticals that you want to start with, and also start with a smaller vertical because our space is already so big. So I think it's better for like somebody who's entirely new to like start following people on X. Vertical by vertical. So if you like stablecoin, start on stablecoin. If you like DeFi, start on DeFi, and so on. And then last but not least, I would say, and this is mostly a pattern that I've seen with, let's say, if you're like like perhaps like not a super established founders, but like you have an established career in Web2 or in finance. Sometimes I see a lot of people don't want to jump into the sea of core crypto people, but they just want to dip their toe. And what I mean by that is like folks would be, hey, I have a lot of network in the traditional Web2 banking space in like Singapore. So let me stick with them, but let me tell them that now I'm going to do something in crypto instead of actually getting to know all of the core players in crypto, because it's a completely different ecosystem. Like I'm seeing this a lot with, let's say, if you're like a Southeast Asian founders that have a lot of connection with the traditional Southeast Asia, like venture capitals and so on, even the investors sometimes, if you have a successful Web2 fund, but you want to get into crypto, if you don't know how market maker works, if you don't know who are like the tier 1 funds, if you don't know like the KOL managers and so on, like if you don't know that because you wanted to latch into this existing status that like, oh, I'm a well-known guy in Web2, like I should not like try to restart, but like our space is actually very different. So that's what I mean. Like, yeah, you really need to get your hands dirty, both trying the product, go to social media, and also actually like understand the ecosystem, and don't have this prejudice that like I'm already like an established big shot outside now. Like I don't want to know these people. Like you got to go to Token Dubai and so on to see what's up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I can sum that up in one word: humility.
Humility. Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that because it's so funny that we were talking about this earlier when we were having coffee, right? Is that crypto is such a fast-paced microcosm of the world. It covers economics, politics, art, culture, a lot of like financial markets. And what you're describing happens exactly in NFTs, in tokens, because you get these individuals who say, look at my LinkedIn. I am X, big company.
Right,
so therefore, I have the right to launch this. And then let's say in 2023, they release a tweet saying, wag me, right? And then it's a signal.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I don't know if DGen is the new wag me, right? Yeah, you see these cultural waves. I think of it like a form of, I like visual analogies, and I think sometimes in graphs, I don't know if that's maybe a little touch of the tism, I don't know. But I think like culture is like space-time. You have an event horizon of this is the leading edge, right? And you don't know what's on the other side of it because no one knows. You don't even know what direction it's going.
Right.
And you have all these subcultures and they're all expanding and you don't have full view of through the fog of war of where the world is, right? We might do with artificial intelligence monitoring all social media, right? And I think someone's building that. It's called a new scope. It's amazing. I'll send you the link to it later. It's essentially like mapping all of X, all of social media in semantic clusters.
Oh, wow.
So you can like see in real time what ideas are spreading and how. I think this is already happening at a state actor level, but
For
very
sure,
interesting.
absolutely, yeah.
But going back to what you're saying, I wish we could branch this conversation because you've said really interesting things and I want to keep coming back to them. But going back to what you're saying about humility, right? And NFTs, people come in and say, well, I'm ex-Disney, so I can do this.
Yep.
And it's just a complete arrogance of the place. But then you see the opposite too. You see someone who's an incredible Web2 founder, and then they pop up in a DeFi Discord and just asking questions.
Yes.
And I think the most successful people, the most curious people, because you can immediately see the low ego, high growth mindset of just like, I just want to find out how things work. And there's a book by, again, I'm going to have to look this up, but essentially the book is about how to win. And it's an ex-MIT chess player, global ranked chess player. And one of the key things they say in the book is when you're looking at a game, don't look at what it says on the back of the game and say this is how you play. It's like look at the actual game and find out the rules and find out the edges, and then you can find your edge there, right?
Right.
So going back to founders and Web2, so you went about what's the wrong way to do it, right? That's what we talked about. What's the right way to do it? So you mentioned distribution, speaking to people on X. Why do you think X is the place to start?
Like crypto is still an information game, and that's the information highway. Like it's still the fastest flow of information, especially when you're starting. It's very hard, of course, for people to get to know like the gossips and behind the scenes and so on. But like just having glimpses and reading between the lines of like the discourse on crypto Twitter, I think that will really fast track you in terms of like knowing at least, okay, who are all the actors in this ecosystem? Who are the funds? Who are the founders? Who are the jokers on X and so on? I just think that if you start with more normie and like mass market social media like TikTok and Instagram, there's just a lot more candidly like either bad actors or just it's all just like clickbait and like
Exactly.
engagement bait basically. There's not much substance there. Like you might be pulled into thinking, if I dump all my savings into this meme coins, I'm gonna be in a yacht party in Dubai by next week, right? Like that's the kind of like videos that get clicks.
I agree.
Unfortunately, so like
Yes.
I would say like X is still the best place.
There's only 5 drivers in the world right on social media. We talked about this earlier. I don't know if this is something that someone's already said, but I did believe in it deeply. Everyone wants sex, power, cash, dopamine, or a mirror.
or a mirror. Yeah.
And I think a mirror is a form of clout,
Right,
social
right.
status. And there's probably a much more psychologically grounded way of expressing that. But I think what it comes down to as well is when we say normie social media, I think it means that you are purely a consumer. You are being given stuff to consume,
Right.
and it's one of those 5 things. Whereas I feel on X, and I don't know if this is true for many people, but I personally feel that I feel like a participant.
Yes.
Like we're driving something forward. You get to have conversations with people. And I think crypto is the ultimate meritocracy. Some people might disagree, but I think that it's the only industry that I've found where you don't, I mean, maybe this is a negative or a positive, but if you're good at what you do, you have proof of work and you have good ideas and you just turn up every day, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your last name is, even what your face looks like, because there's anons and what your LinkedIn is.
Yes.
And I think it's the last frontier of the American dream a little bit.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Did you feel that when you were getting into it?
Yes. Again, maybe a bit more context. I was an industrial engineering operations research background, and obviously the more typical career path would like either work for like Tesla as a supply chain engineer or something, or maybe like sales engineers at Facebook or something. And where am I going with this is that I don't think I could have gotten my start working for a quote unquote hedge fund if it's not because it's a crypto fund and I had written janky, oh my God, like I'm exposing myself, but like in 2016, 2017, I had like old writings. Now, if I look back, this is really bad. But this was just like a college kid that was like trying to like, hey, like I want to get into the space. I will do like anything, like I love this and so on. And I don't think you could do that with traditional financial career path. Like you would have to come from like the target school, like finance major, maybe like from Wharton, and you have to, there's like a playbook that you have to follow. And I think crypto kind of breaks that. And although like every single year, I would say it's getting more and more mature, it might be harder for like somebody with a completely, like zero knowledge or background, but it's still, you're right, it's still one of the best like frontier to actually get into. I mean, like try getting into like a very good AI companies without maybe like not much background. It is still very hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, it depends on the role too, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to turn up to a large protocol and become a lead engineer if you don't have a pretty decent technical background. And even on them, I think it's interesting because marketing is almost thought of as and I would agree, it's the lowest common barrier to entry. But that doesn't mean it's not the most difficult in some ways, right?
It is the most difficult.
It is the most subjective, which by nature, it is the most difficult to be objectively good at. Right?
Yes.
So often there is this discourse around like, what do they even do? And I think that argument is kind of like saying, which is the most important part of a car, right? Is the wheels of the engine. Well, this is a silly argument, right? Can a submarine swim? I don't know. That's not the point. They're underwater. Let's just leave it.
Right.
But I think you're absolutely right. It's distribution of your ideas and public proof of work. Because when I was hiring before I joined more markets, I wouldn't even read a CV. I'd ask, because CVs nowadays can be almost entirely generated.
Yeah.
It's a
With
lot of time
AI.
to check,
Yeah.
right? You'd ask, if anything, I would always go for people that have obsessions outside of making money. So if someone's a professional basket weaver, or someone's incredibly passionate about creating intricate Lego models, any like high-level sports person,
Right.
instant hire, because there's a much higher confidence signal than, oh, I am endorsed in this skill by someone else, because anyone can say anything.
Yeah.
But your social media, you can't fake it,
Yep.
right? Your discourse, you can't fake. It's very difficult to fake over time. And if you fake it for long enough, you've still got the right ideas, right? So I agree with you in the sense that the best way for people to get a job is probably like, because you were very early. You were writing online about things in 2016. And now this is almost like expected in all industries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I came into crypto through marketing and growth because I couldn't code. I didn't know about anything else, but I knew video games and I knew people, because as a doctor, patients and users are almost exactly the same.
Right.
They don't do what you tell them. They don't know what's good for them. They're not rational
right.
actors within a user flow ecosystem, right? And they never
That's
read
a very good analogy.
And they never read the label. They take the wrong medicine all the time. And the incentives are not there either. So being a doctor is like trying to do airdrop farmers without incentives.
Oh my God. We just have the right words. Yeah.
So that's how I get in. And I think a lot of young people try and get in this way as well. But I think there's a real opportunity that's being missed is by doing what you did, which is deeply get interested in a topic and do it. So if you had to kind of say what you said again, but give it in like a 3-point playbook for someone young who wants to get in the game and get it, when I say it in air quotes, like get a proper job at a proper company.
Yeah.
Rather than, look, I'm not disrespecting it, but like I know that a lot of people see community and social as almost disposable, not part of a core business function,
right.
which I can see why they say that. I disagree. But let's say you want to get a proper job that your parents would be okay with initially, right?
Right.
What would the 3 things be for someone to do?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question. I mean, of course, it depends on like your background. So like what kind of like unfair proof of work that you can show to others. So I think that's the first thing, like take a step back and see like what is the unfair type of like unique proof of work that you can show to the crypto world that you have. So maybe like if you're like a former like software engineer at like a FANG companies and you already have that for you, then you can like easily. So again, it depends on like, it's very case by case, but like to be practical, I would say still find an extremely niched vertical that you like. And I would say even like stablecoin is not niche enough. You need to go like one layer deeper. It's like yield bearing stablecoin with less than 100 million in total supply or something like become very specific and obsessively write and make content about that in a direction that you want to be known as. So like if you want to be a researcher and get a job like many of these like research firms like Masari, Blockworks and so on, then keep on doing that. Like keep on writing like very specific and don't be scared to give your takes. Like at the start, of course, writing something just typically means like curating or just reporting on how you see it. But you need to know that everybody's still figuring it out, even if they've already made it. When you really talk to them, like they are still like figuring things out. So never be scared to give your takes after a while. So like that's the first thing. Like find a very niche verticals, like obsessively write about it, and do not be scared to give your takes on it. And of course, like when you're very small, and again, this might be like 2x focus of an advice, but you need to like interact. If you have like less than 5K, it's actually very hard just to grow based on like virality. So just keep on like interacting, but don't be like one of this like reply guy that's just like GM like or like using GPT to like it's so oh my god, there's so many bots. I'm sure you're like as I'm sure you know these days. So just ask questions. I think again, be humble. Ask questions if you don't know. Ask for their takes. Candidly, a lot of investors and a lot of like KOLs like to yap. So like if you ask them for their thoughts, they would yap.
Yes.
Yeah. So
That's the mirror.
that's the mirror. So just do that on X. And then I would say like last but not least, a lot of people do the distribution game right, but they don't show exactly what they can do for protocols, which I think is like where a lot of people kind of miss. So I'm not sure whether it's it can be like a mini case study that you write. It can be like you trying to vibe code something and kind of show that how you can, like let's say if you hire me for the role that I've been aspiring to actually get, this is what you this is what you can get. It's like, give them like the tasting menu. Like this is yeah. Like this is my cooking skills. Like I might be like a new chef, but here's my cooking skills, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of people yap about their restaurants, but they never show their cooking.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you think about it in like chemistry terms or biology terms, right?
Yeah.
There is an activation energy to every process or reaction.
Yep.
I think by having a social media profile that shows proof of work, you reduce that activation energy. As someone hiring, you don't want to have to do work to find out how good the person is.
Yes.
You want to, if anything, as a person trying to be hired, you want someone to reach out to you because you're the person. As soon as you put out a tweet or a post or a little LinkedIn message that, hey, I'm looking for a role in this, do you know anything? Someone's going to come and get you.
Yeah.
I think that's the role of anyone, I think, is
Absolutely. Yeah.
be so good at something that it's unreasonable to expect that anyone won't come to you first. But based on your points around, I think, very good advice. There's a nuance to it too, right? You touched on it briefly, which was don't just reply for the sake of it. If anything, that's a net negative.
Yeah.
It's like quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use GPT, get good at it, right?
Yes,
it's a skill issue.
It's a skill issue.
People always say that reply guy agents don't work, reply guy bots don't work. I think that is a very small context window of the world, right? They do work. It's called disinformation on a state actor level.
Yeah.
And it's very effective.
All these buzzers and so on.
It's insane because if you look on most political posts now, you just dig into the comments. Some of them look really real, good profile picture, and you click one of them, and the username is like a series of letters and numbers.
Yeah.
And those are the bad ones. Is there anything you learned along the way that you didn't expect?
I think the biggest takeaway is that financial markets are mostly, well, in my journey, having been in the space for like 8 years and so on, crypto is a microcosm of like how the broader financial markets and belief system works. And some people might read that comment as me being like cynical, but I also think it's being pragmatic. Like I love my favorite word is like pragmatic. but I think it's because like when you really take a step back and you looked at how the broader financial markets, how central bank belief systems, it's the cabal system, like everything crypto, if you really study it from a first principle thinking, it reflects everything else that's already happening in the world. So I think the best way is to it's not really like a surprise, but the biggest takeaway is to understand that, and of course to find your own place in all of that, and also having your own sense of self, right? Because like if you play the game too much, then you might get sucked into it. But I think that is like the biggest takeaway. Like it's not that stablecoin is a permissionless value transfer. Of course I know that, but it's like the biggest takeaway is that like if you really take a step back and looked at the underbelly of our industry and everything that's going on, it's just a reflection of the broader things. And to me, in a way, it's a very like calming reflection of like, okay, like everybody is like figuring things out, and this is just like how the world works.
Yeah.
Crypto really teaches you that very, very fast. I would say that's why it's a very good tuition.
That reflection really hits home with me because everyone says when you're a kid, when you're an adult, you have it all. You understand everything's going on.
Yeah.
And I think then growing up is realizing that most people don't know what they're doing and everyone's figuring it out. And stablecoins are a great example, right? And like understanding what inflationary emissions are plus how the Fed works.
Yep.
And it is a microcosm.
Yes.
And if you get it, then you can find patterns.
Yes.
And there's a bit of joy in that pattern as well.
Yeah.
And also belief systems, right? I think there's a lot that we can learn from theology. And they're the original marketing, right? The OG coordination system. Like the most successful corporation in human history is the church, right?
Yes.
Incredible work.
R.I.P. Pope Francis.
Yeah. Shout out, brother. The POPE.
Oh my God.
I mean, respect to the guy.
Yeah.
But I think the point for me was going to be, if you look at the way that religions work and belief systems, you look at like cults, a word that's thrown around a lot, but essentially like even the federal government changing the rates does not materially affect actually what's the reality of the market. It's almost like a lagging indicator. But, but we all believe it. So we all react accordingly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not leading. So it's very interesting to see these patterns and then act on them, which is a good thing. I think. Where do you see crypto going? Are you positive? Are you bearish or bullish?
Bullish.
Yeah.
Okay, but like Real talk, yes, bullish, because the way that I see it, because of course, in the past couple of quarters, you would see a lot of these takes of people getting a bit jaded, which I'm not blaming them just because, like all the memes and then like the token launches are getting weaker and weaker. But I do think that, and it might be a bit of an idealistic view, but I think crypto's permissionless nature, just going back to the cypherpunk spirits, and this is by no means, like having inefficient DAO governance compared to like a more top-down approach when you're like starting. I'm not saying we should go back to like the theatrical of DAO governance of 2021, but it's more about, okay, like if you are gonna do like an AI product that is gonna know like everything about your life, if you're gonna do an NSFW AI product, like I'd rather all of those stuffs be done in crypto rails because at least everything is more permissionless.
Yeah.
From a tech perspective, if you're talking about the token game or like the token component, that's like separate. That's like the capital market side. But at least seeing like where the industry is going towards, if all of this is on crypto rails, I think it will be better because you essentially have more transparency.
It's better for society too, right?
Better for society. Yeah.
Before we finish, I think AI is something we should touch upon. I know that you're personally very interested in it. I probably got most of my social impact from picking a niche, writing about it, making prototype, proof of work, right? And candidly, I'm not the best at it. Like there's many people. Boring Marketer is a fantastic person in the marketing space around automation. But I think the difference is distribution. If you're working on your own and doing stuff and no one knows about it, then did it even fall in the forest, right?
Right.
So, but recently what came out, I want to hear your take on this. They changed the 4.0 model. So they changed it a little bit and it became incredibly sycophantic.
Oh, okay.
It was telling people, that's a great idea. So people were playing with it and saying, I'm going to start a business that involves putting excrement on a stick and selling it to people. And the model would say, that's a great idea. Fantastic.
I see.
So there's a very interesting difference on X versus other social media platforms, which was on X, people were almost rebelling against it, saying, Sam Altman, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. But then on other platforms, the reviews of the ChatGPT app on the App Store, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. It was, this is amazing. I love it. I love it. So I think we're going to bifurcate in society to people that are aware of the impact of AI on their minds and people that aren't.
Got it. So you're saying like folks outside of X are more okay with AI is just enabling whatever idea that they have. So it's like more like just like anything that's a good idea, and you just like sort of like be like
because you won't know.
Yeah, like a robotic cheerleader that doesn't really know what you like
almost like a polarizing feedback loop. Because in the end of the day, OpenAI's real product is user data. Because they not only have your ad behaviors like Google does or Facebook does, they have your thoughts.
Yeah.
And they can probably reverse engineer your thoughts. But they can also change the way you think.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe with social media, like we've seen polarization of society, right? You fall into your little pods. But what about self-polarization? You have your own ideas and there's a feedback loop of that's a great idea, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. And then you come out of it and then you might have a completely different worldview to like someone who lives on your street. Where do you, I guess it's a huge question, right? Where do you see us going, firstly in crypto with relation to AI and in just society in general in relation to AI?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a big question. Yeah, but I'm going to try. Crypto AI, I think most of it is like vaporware. I think they just need to like really niche down and see if they can even make like a form of wrapper that's better than like others. I think that's the extent to my comment. Like everything right now is just AI coordination, AI settlement, and so on, which might work, but that is just like that's because it's a big idea. They know it's going to take some time. So there's like VC funding that you can do, blah, blah, blah. But the majority of the AI tools that we use on a daily basis aren't even crypto AI tools. So I think it's going to take some time. And I also, like, I'm going to touch base on like the DeFi AI and so on. Like, I think that's also going to, we will see some like just recommendations, but I don't think large capital is going to be comfortable giving money to AI to deploy on-chain yet. And whereas about AI and like the whole world, I'm just going to leave it with, if the listeners haven't watched Westworld, there's a bit of a spoiler alert, but in season 3, there's an AI called Rehoboam, which basically like it's a bit like a mix of, imagine OpenAI mixed with Palantir. So it knows like everything that's what you're doing and so on, and it shapes the fabric of society. Like you would get rejected by a job offer, or like you would like even before the company knows that you're even applying, like it goes to like the level like it preempts your life decisions, which to me that's like, oh my god, this is such a good show. Like people should really watch that. So like so that's why my crypto AI bullishness is that I think at least if it's a little bit permissionless, then maybe we can hedge some of that. I don't know if the permissionless nature is going to be able to be strong enough, but I am actually a fan of like seeing more and more competition. So like there's China, Elon, Sam. That's good. Like let them all fight. And my hope is that AI is going to be like GPS. So the one that is actually benefiting is us. Like there's no company that monetizes GPS. Again, this might be like a very bearish take from a VC perspective, but I think that's for a bit better of like society. Like no superstar AI companies, maybe like a lot of like smaller ones, but it's just going to be like GPS. Yeah.
That's a great analogy because, power, water, food, electricity, internet, and now AI. And maybe that's the future. Yeah, I hope that happens. I mean, this is, near coded, Nillion coded. There's a lot of crypto AI companies that privacy preserving, free rails. I think that's the only way that we don't become essentially subservient. I mean, maybe because sci-fi's already given us the paths that we could take, right? And maybe it's going to work out. I hope it does. Dude, I think that's probably a good place to call it. I think
awesome, man.
With AI, I hope it works out. Dude, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Cheers, man.
What have you got planned the rest of today? Anything you want to shout out for the audience? Any projects?
Maybe just like you can find me on X, maybe put all the show notes below. And also I run a newsletter with 20,000 subs and a small podcast called More Than Speculation. But that's it. Again, I'm an open book. You can reach out to me on X and so on, and we can always brainstorm on like ideas and so on. But please, when you DM somebody, tell me what you want to do. Don't just say GM. Okay.
So you're saying that if I message you and say let's collab, it wouldn't work?
No, it wouldn't work. Okay.
Bear that in mind. So everyone listening, if you want to get hired, message Marco.